Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and over the last few weeks we've been closely taking a look at all of the different classes in the War Within Alpha, as well as a beta. And recently, just a handful of days ago, I decided to go over some of the hero specs for the class of the Evoker. And while taking a look at all three of them, one really stood out to me the most, and that has been the Flameshaper, which I haven't really seen be played nearly as much as Scout Commander or the Chrono Warden, the other two options available for the class of the Evoker. So I begun to experiment with it a little bit more, and I noticed quite a few of Preservation Evokers, which aren't really common on the beta because they're not that popular, but when I do see them, a lot of them also have been playing Flameshaper as well. And that's because there's actually mechanics within the Flameshaper that allow for an aggressive, offensive, damage-weaving build of an Evoker that's very similar to Disc Priest or a Fist-weaving Mistweaver Monk, and I love it. And I think I might have found my favorite healing playstyle for the entire expansion of the War Within, if this type of build makes it to the live realms. So today I want to showcase you this Flameshaper Engulf healer spec that has quite a bit of a punch when it comes to its overall offensive power, but also uses that damage to heal your allies. If you want to see more regular class updates like these for the War Within beta, be sure to follow the channel. Otherwise, let's dive right into probably my favorite healing spec, bar none. So first things first, I feel like I should get this out of the way. I'm a big fan of DPS type of healers. As someone who has a pretty deep background lore of DPS classes for the most part, the only types of healers I used to have a lot of fun with and even try to explore are the ones that focus on DPS aspects as part of their gameplay. So Discipline Priests, Mistweaver Monks, hell, even Paladins that have like a melee healing build, all of those playstyles I was instantly drawn to. And Preservation Evoker, when it first came out, was actually one of those healers that isn't as heavily invested in DPS, but there's quite a bit of opportunity for you to be able to unleash some damage yourself, and it kind of fit me pretty well. On live, the spec does do a bit of decent damage. Outside of your healing abilities, you'll always maintain Fire Breath, and there's even been tier says that still wants you to keep using all of your empowerment abilities, even ones that don't necessarily heal your allies. And the basic gameplay of how you can spread Fire Breath into a Living Flame and some of the other talents you can add in to add Disintegrate as part of your rotation, but also Resource Regeneration. There's quite a little bit of this DPS aspects that you can play out as a Preservation, which has always been a ton of fun. Granted, Prez still is a healer-focused playstyle, but you don't have nearly as much of this interaction as like a Disc Priest does, where you can deal damage to heal an ally at the same time. And I always wish there was a better way to blend these things together, and this is until I met the Engulf hero spec of the Evoker. Now, I recently took a look at some of the hero playstyles for the Evoker with some of their hero talents, and I mentioned how there's a lot of Chrono Warden healers and Augmentation Evokers, but also a lot of Scale Commanders, and that is true. But recently I started to see a lot more Flameshapers. As we've been doing some Mythic Plus testing over the weekend as well as raid testing, I've noticed that there's been a few Flameshapers here and there, which has been a fairly low amount of Dev players, but Preservation players, while they're not common in the most popular healer on the beta, there usually are Flameshaper for the ability of Engulf. What Engulf does is Dragonflight damage that can either damage a foe or heal an ally. And this effect is increased for each periodic effect you have on the target. This means that as a healer, you have some obvious synergy with healing effects such as like your dot or your hot or reversion, but also your doom breath ability. So when you have two of these hots on a target and you hit them with Engulf, that healing is an increase on the target, but it also does some AoE damage as well. Or if let's say you have a dot on the target like Fire Breath and you hit Disintegrate for a second dot of Enkindle and you use it, you could also use this ability to deal damage as well. So there's a little bit of flexibility with how the hero spec works, but then there's also talents in between that add even more of this flexibility, or this rather melding of damage and healing together, that makes this build more similar to that of like a Disc Priest-esque type of playstyle. And you have a lot of good talents in here, from Enkindle, where your essence abilities, both healing and damage, apply a damage over time or healing over time effect on allies, again adding an extra component of how Engulf can be amplified. There's quite a bit of that crit interaction with this playstyle also. The ability of Engulf can gain a additional charge and deal additional damage, but also quicken the next cast of abilities that you use. You can empower both either the Fire Breath, the Dream Breath value, or the leftover healing or damage of Enkindles. But also you have awesome defenses such as life cycles, where Renew and Blaze can now become an external, where your Renew and Blaze also applies to your target or one nearby injured ally when cast. So you'll always get the Renew and Blaze on you, but if you're targeting somebody and you use it, Now both you and the target now gain Renew and Blaze, which gives you a healing over time effect that will heal for 100% of the damage they take. This has an extra external to rotate in between that and time dilation, which in a dungeon scenario it feels like, as long as the mechanic isn't gonna literally one-shot an ally, this is a fantastic tool for recovery. I've been playing around with that one in particular, and I'm a huge fan of the fact that this defensive can be used to heal an ally because it generally does a lot of healing, and this can even work pretty well if you play Devastation if you want some off healing for your group. Though the talent that really helps encompass Flameshaper is the Flameshaper's interaction with the Fire Breath ability, like Traveling Flames, where it can extend the duration of Fire Breath, but also consume your Fire Breath. Engulf consumes 4 seconds of Dream Breath or Fire Breath from the target. This mechanic isn't explicit in the capstones because for healers it just says Dream Breath, but when you switch over to Devastation, it also says Fire Breath, and I'm not sure if this is meant to stay as a primary mechanic going forward or if it's just a bug on the beta, but I'm kinda hoping that Consume Flame works for both Dream Breath and Fire Breath, because Engulf will consume 4 seconds of it, cause the ability to spread to a second nearby target, and that consumption will also be amplified to do damage or healing depending if it's Dream Breath or Fire Breath for 300% of the amount consumed. And this damage kind of AoEs everything around you with a soft cap of 5 targets. So this should be mentioned that this could potentially be changed in a future beta build, but I hope it doesn't, because Flameshaper is so much fun when it has this viability of damage, but also a healing component for preservation specifically. And that's primarily why a lot of people are picking up Preservation to begin with, is for that kind of unique meld of damage and healing all together, because there's talents to support this much better than ever before, and overall it's been a ton of fun to play into. What also helps make the damage healing kind of playstyle a little bit better for Preservation are some of the newer talents they've gotten over their time in the alpha and the beta. Normally the Evoker talent tree is focused on a blend of green Dragonflight magic, which is mostly healing over time and direct healing, but also the bronze magic, which deals usually with healing over time and some unique healing mechanics, like where green magic will use primarily big upfront healing with things like Spirit Bloom, or even big group recovery with Emerald Communion, as well as big abilities such as Dreamflight for massive healing for everybody else. Bronze magic is a little bit different, as it can help slow down the intake of an ally's damage, provide a shield that can also apply a bunch of variety of different buffs to allies. Whenever somebody is low, you can summon a version of yourself to heal them instantaneously, and also you can bank up a bunch of abilities and then kind of use them in the same order that you were able to store them with the ability of stasis. So bronze is a little bit more eccentric that way. But over the last few builds, they've added a middle row that's a bit more focused on the resources, which then becomes more of a red Dragonflight focused mechanics, starting with things such as Lifebind, which is the same as before, but then opens up into other talents such as Titan's Gift. Essence Burst, the main mechanic that allows you to gain additional resources, increases the effectiveness of your next resource ability by 25%. This can either be things such as your Emerald Blossom, or things such as Echo, for example, but it also can be used with things such as Disintegrate. Disintegrate can also deal additional damage with the talent of Energy Loop, where it deals 35% more damage while restoring you some mana. And with the talent of Enkindle, those essence abilities now do damage over time or healing over time, so as you disintegrate a target, you can build up quite a decent dot on the enemy over time. From there on, we also have a capstone called Life Spark, a tier set that was added, I believe, during Season 1, if not Season 2 of Dragonflight, where Reversion Healing has a chance to cause your next Living Flame to be cast instantly and deal 50% increased damage or healing, stacks up to 2 charges. So as I put up Reversion on just about everybody out here, hitting some train dummies, you will see that from time to time I am going to get procs of Living Flame. Living Flame also has a lot of talent interactions, like with your Fire Breath you can hit multiple targets, or with things such as Call of Sarah, you can actually make the healing of Living Flame be increased by 100% more. But the damage component of this ability is also good on its own, because that's another opportunity for you to be able to get additional Essence Burst procs either way. Like here we go, yet another Essence Burst proc that you can kind of rotate into more damage or healing for allies. It gives you a little bit of this like instant cast flexibility, but if you're playing more of a damage focused build, this gives you quite a bit of more output in general. Finally though, the other talent that should be noted here is Lifegiver's Flame. Not a new talent, but an old one that has an interaction with Flameshaper. Fire Breath heals 5 nearby injured allies for 80% of its damage done up to 5 targets, split evenly among them. So whether you use a rank 1 Fire Breath that deals more healing over time or damage over time, or a rank 4 that has a little bit more of that instantaneous burst damage attached behind it, Fire Breath is always going to be able to be quite a bit of healing on everybody in your group. That being said, it is a Fire Breath Healy mechanic, so if you found a way to consume that Fire Breath, or even extended, that could make that Fire Breath healing a little bit better. And Flameshaper comes in clutch with this, as we talked before, Consume Flame, which consumes 4 seconds of Fire Breath, which is still damage of Fire Breath, which benefits from Life Giver's Flame directly. But you also extend the duration of Fire Breath. You also cause it to spread to additional targets within 30 yards if for some reason you don't already have a target hit by a Fire Breath before. And because the ability extends the duration of Fire Breath, you can now actually bank up for a higher rank Fire Breath if you're trying to go for more instantaneous action while also extending it, or if you're just trying to go for like a rank 1 and just have a permanent Fire Breath that just ticks out constantly, which is what really adds that healing and damage weave of mechanics. So on a Fire Breath, you can see somebody is always going to be getting healed by the Fire Breath ability, and if I were to engulf that Fire Breath in order to extend its duration, that instantaneous consumption of Fire Breath will always heal somebody around it. Let's actually try that real quick. I'll try not to get killed here by the train dummy. And then we use the ability of Fire Breath, and it's just constantly helping me recover health little by little. And as I get a little bit low again, and if I engulf, you can see that the healing is actually going to be a little bit more instantaneous. But this healing ends up healing 5 targets nearby, just a constant stream of healing as long as Fire Breath is there, which almost adds you like a healing over time effect, but it's really just from the raw damage over time ability specifically. The Engulf has this damage component, but also a healing component that you can utilize. And Engulf works super well inside of the main mechanic of the Preservation Evoker that makes him such a good and bursty healer, that is mechanic of Echo. Echo is a unique mechanic for Preservation specifically. Echo essentially allows you to spread echoes to multiple allies, and the next single target healing spell ability, or like one of your empowerment abilities, will echo to every other ally. So if let's say you're trying to use an ability such as, I'm gonna put echo on this guy, if you're trying to use a healing over time effect such as reversion on yourself, you'll also reversion on the target with echo. If let's say I echo him and I go to hit all these targets over here with Dream Breath, this target also gets a Dream Breath. It echoes onto them as well. So let's say you have an ally that is loaded up with HOTS, for instance, such as this training dummy over here. I hit him with an echo into reversion, as well as that echo and a Dream Breath ability. And then I hit all these target training dummies with a temporal anomaly. So all of them have an echo too. And I engulf this hotted up target. The amount of healing that you can do to primary target cleaves onto everything else with an echo, which I think is the best part of this build in particular. Because it has so much synergy, so much burst value, and the setup, it takes a second for sure. It takes a little bit of time, but if you already know that the big damage mechanic is going to be happening all at once, you can set it up as you can set things up ahead of time as a Preservation Evoker. Kind of very similar to a Discipline Priest. When you know damage is going to be going out, that setup can lead to a big payoff, and Evoker is a little bit more burstier rather than the gradual healing that happens as a Discipline Priest. So there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of ways you can weave abilities back and forth. There's the switch between damage and being able to heal your allies while passively dealing damage, or going for a full-on healing build that's very bursty that naturally synergizes with the rest of your kit that exists. So overall, I feel like the playstyle of Engulf ends up fitting something that I've actually wanted to see for a good bit out of Preservation, because as long as this capstone works as it does currently, and they don't end up nerfing it to be mostly just a healing component, which is still pretty strong on its own, the ability itself, the Engulf, it does a ton of overall healing. And overall, I think I found a perfect healing spec of Evoker that I never even knew that I needed in my life. It's actually so fun. There's a lot of healers out there in the game. Some are very setup focused, some are very burst focused, but what I really like about the Evoker is how, yeah, you could utilize cooldowns in order to top everybody off and stabilize the entire group, but I also feel like the Evoker has the ability to line up a bunch of echoes together, empower a bunch of skills at once, set up a big Super Bloom combo, or set up a synergy with Verdant Embrace into a big empowered Living Flame as echoes are spread on the entire group. And I always enjoyed that kind of like in the moment healing rather than offsetting a lot of the healing with a cooldown. Because as long as I'm ahead of the curve, as long as I can set up a bunch of synergies and combos, the Evoker should be able to stabilize in just about every situation. And I think that's my favorite part about this healer. And now that we have this passive damage component involved as part of this gameplay with the Flameshaper, I found it to be a lot more fun and a bit more engaging. That being said, they could change the way Flameshaper works because, as you can read with the capstone, it says nothing about Dragon's Breath ability. Although with the tooltips on Wowhead, it does actually have the Dream Breath and Dragon's Breath included. So it's maybe just an adjustment over on the live where it doesn't show both, but it's supposed to. Or they'll end up changing so Flameshaper is more focused on healing for preservation, which I think would be a little bit of a downgrade. Either way, I'm hoping the Blizzard keeps it because this has been the most fun version of preservation that I've played so far, and if you are in the War Within beta, definitely give this one a go. If you played preservation before, it's essentially the same thing as normal preservation with echoes and stuff, but you can now line up a solid combo with the Flameshaper in Consume Flame and Engulf. They can do quite a bit of damage, but also quite a bit of that passive healing. And I think definitely puts the class of Evoker maybe a little bit more on the board for me, primarily because Flameshaper has been so fun to play around with. And it does something different because it plays into healing over time, damage over time components of the Evoker class, which isn't necessarily an importance like, a Shadow Priest or an Affliction Warlock or anything like that, but it gives you interesting pieces of gameplay to interact with, and I'm a huge fan of that in particular. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think about Preservation Evoker or the Flameshaper Engulf playstyle. I want to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What are your thoughts about this Engulf offensive healer preservation build? And would you want to see something like this preserved going forward? Or do you think maybe this should do as the tooltip suggests, make it all about the healing focus rather than the damage focus of preservation? And does this hero spec combo with the way the preservation works, does this get you excited about potentially even playing a Healy Evoker spec going forward for the War Within? Because for me, I'm a huge fan of those DPS healer type of classes, so for me this is definitely a plus. But when you look at a preservation, would you like it to have some options for a DPS healer type of gameplay, or do you want it to be just all focused around healing specifically? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.